Welcome to another edition of the Tom Green Podcast, and we had to electrify the beginning of this one because this is the World Series preview. Now, I brought in a returning guest from our MLB shows, but I also brought in a new guest from the same network for our MLB pods. We first brought in, of course, our regular Johnnie Black, the most interesting Scorecrow reporter in the world. And we brought in a new guy, Bryan Brammer, the host of the Ball and Mitt Podcast at Ball and Mitt Pod on Twitter. Welcome to the show, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
Oh, you bet. So first of all, before we get started, I'm going to give a couple shout-outs here, and it was because I went to the Michigan State game last weekend, and I got to reconvene with one of my favorite reporters ever, Jenny Taft. She's been on my profile picture for 6 years now. Can't believe it, but we've updated like once every year, once every couple years. She's awesome. Fox Sports reporter, does college football. She's the host of Undisputed. So yes, she has to deal with Skip Bayless every day, so she doesn't think I'm that delusional, thankfully. Also, shout-outs to Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson. They also did the Michigan State game up in the booth. Jenny was on the sidelines. Hope to get them on the podcast at some time. Hopefully, I bring them some great material here with this MLB show. So, shout-outs to Jenny, Joel, and Gus. Great people, great reporters. Anyway, MLB podcast time. But before we get to the World Series stuff, by the way, Jenny on the World Series has to be in a conundrum because she went to BU, but she lives in LA right now, so she's got to be, in a conundrum there. But anyway, Astros. Let's start with the Astros. Out of the World Series, did not win a game after being accused of cheating. Let's actually bring in the new guy out of the bullpen, Brian. He throws a 95-mile-an-hour heater. 75-mile-an-hour sinker out of the bullpen. Release the Kimbrel. Tell us about the Astros, Brian.
I was expecting them to put up a better fight, honestly. I actually just recently moved out here to the Denver area about 2 months ago. And so I kind of got caught up in some National League baseball. And I'm an Orioles fan, so my season was over back in April. Yeah, maybe even before the season began. This is just terrible. And then from the trade deadline, July 31st, all the way into the season, it was just bad. But Houston was one of those teams that I followed above 100 wins. I think we had 3 of those from the American League into the playoffs over 100 wins. And I think a lot of it was one Altuve. I believe he got hurt, or he just recently had surgery, I believe, on his knee, which tells me that had been lingering for quite some time. And so he wasn't as productive as he usually is. I mean, he was the workhorse last year when they won the World Series. I don't know if it was fatigue. I don't know if Boston is just that good. I know they've had some issues with their bullpen, but when you can hit the ball, you can hit the, and you've heard in other sports, great defense beats a great offense, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. Great pitching does, but when you've got great hitters, you can make it happen. And I just think, Houston didn't show up, and I think a lot of it was, I think it was fatigue. Pitching was not there. But they just ran into, it's one of those things where, what's that saying of the immovable force or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but they ran into something that they couldn't move. And I just really think that they hit a brick wall. I think they realized that they were not the best team in the American League this year.
Yeah, and it seems like once the accusations came out of them stealing signs, their balloon burst. Even though they were cleared, they never won a game since. Johnny, tell us more.
Yeah, I think the whole cheating thing and the whole doing signs thing was a little bit of a coincidence. I don't know if that directly correlated. I'd have to agree with Brian to the point where I think Boston might be just that good. They did win the most games this year in the Major League for a reason. The only thing, I had Houston winning the series too, because what Houston did to Cleveland in the LDS, shut them down, swept them 3 games in a row, controlled. Look what they did to Donaldson and Ramirez and Lindor. They shut them down. I thought Houston's pitching with Verlander, Cole, even with Keuchel, Morton, and even their bullpen, picking up Osuna this year, I thought they would be able to shut down Betts, Martinez, Benintendi, those guys, and they weren't able to do it. Boston's lineup is a completely different animal than, say, the Yankees in Cleveland, who are more home run centric. Boston's lineup will kill you by 1,000 paper cuts type thing. They'll walk, they'll steal a base, they'll beat you on the field, they'll beat you running the bases. They could beat you a lot of different ways. And another surprising thing was Boston's bullpen. Everyone was like, well, it's Kimbrel and everyone else. Well, everyone else did pretty well. So it was more than that, and that's what I think put them over the top.
Yeah, as a Tigers fan, Dave Dombrowski had built some excellent bullpens, ... LOL. Well, not so much in this case, because, yes, the Kimbrel did well as usual, but the whole bullpen was lights out. I mean, once Boston took the lead in the 7th or the 8th inning, that was it. Lights out. Turn out the lights. The series is over. And let's also mention the Betts play. But anyway, you were. It sounds like Johnny was going to add to it.
Oh, I was just going to say, hey, Brian and I were actually talking on the phone earlier today too.
Sure.
And the playoffs are a different beast in itself because you get to use starters as relievers. You don't need a 5-man rotation, and you saw a tip of the cap to Alex Cora for using Porcello in relief, using Sale in relief when he needed to.
He made a great sale.
He made all the right moves. He switched guys around, and they performed well. So you get that extra little bit in the bullpen. Not to take away from the rest of the bullpen guys in Boston because they all pitched well, with the exception of Workman. But he just made all the right moves. That's what it came down to.
Yeah, and I tell you, making a great sale will always save you some money in the end. Anything to add, Brian?
Well, I was just gonna add I actually was kind of anticipating Houston beating Boston as well.
Right.
I don't know really how many games, but I predicted them to win because of, like Johnny said, how they dominated Cleveland. I think it was like 16-6 in regard to runs, and one of those games might have just been, just exploded. So you don't always know how some could be junk runs or whatever. But like I remember mentioning it in my podcast about, I think Cleveland had 4 pitchers that had over 200 strikeouts, and Houston being able to dominate that, and then Boston didn't have anything like that as far as strikeouts. So I was just as surprised. Especially I think it was 4 games to 1, and
5-game series.
So I just think great teams step up when, and great players step up when their teams need it, and just like John said with the bullpen and Alex Cora, I just think that it shows that you need a complete package. The bullpen, the starters, the pinch hitters, the batters, and the manager. They all come together to make this cohesive group, and that's how you win series and championships.
Yeah, and I'll also wrap up this Astros conversation with on the Rundown last week. I'm not sure if you guys watched the MLB Network show, The Rundown, with Kelly Nash, Alexa Dat. They were saying, tweet us bold predictions on NLCS, ALCS. Well, I decided to do that, and my bold NLCS prediction was that Kershaw was going to win 3 games, and Muncy was going to hit 3 home runs to propel the Dodgers to win in 7. Didn't quite happen that way, but the Dodgers won in 7. ALCS, I thought that JD was going to slug 500, but Springer, Altuve, and Correa were going to outslug JD and move the Astros out of the World Series. On the ALCS, just like both of you guys, I was wrong.
Well, we've all learned something today.
Exactly. We learn something new every day.
That's right. The more you know.
The meme pictures, the more you know. So moving on to Manny Machado, which Brian wrote an article about Machado, and we'll get to his piece in a minute. Machado kicking Jesus Aguilar, and he was fined for it. Johnny, was that classless?
Well, let's say it was chippy. It was petty. But my take on that is that in the game, I believe it was the game before, Machado slid into second base and put his hand up and hit Garcia's leg when he was trying to turn a double play.
And I will say that sliding into second base, that's better than how I'm doing in my love life so far. It was just to kick that in there.
Where's that drum signal you needed? Yeah. Awesome.
But him sliding into second base and putting his arm up, obviously the umpires got it right. They called interference, called a double play, and everything like that. And when you watch the Machado play with Aguilar kind of stands straight up on first base, so to speak, almost, and he catches the ball close to his body instead of a normal first baseman reaching out, stretching, and then taking his foot off the base. So I think on Aguilar's part, that was a little chippy and kind of standing out. Now, Aguilar's a big dude. You can see in the pictures, he's a lot bigger than Machado as far as girth. Let's put it that way. So him standing there and kind of, not so much getting in the way of Machado, but kind of standing there, and so he has to run kind of right next to him. I think Aguilar was kind of saying to Machado, like, we didn't forget about you trying to hit our second baseman, our shortstop. And Machado running through the base. He could have changed his path. He had plenty of room. He ran inside the baseline. He stepped on first with his right foot instead of his left. So, yes, Machado dragged his leg. But there was no intent to injure there. I mean, I'll hand this over to Brian because he's the one that wrote the piece on it, and he did a lot more research than I've had. But I think that's my kind of take on it, that it was just a little chippy on both sides. I don't forgive Aguilar for that either. And a lot of people, I don't think, looked at that end of it. So I think Machado, I'm not saying he was right in doing it, but I think it got overblown. But I'll let Brian answer the rest of that, definitely.
Absolutely. Brian, your take.
Yeah, sure. So I am a Baltimore Orioles fan, as I mentioned. So I follow.
I feel sorry for you.
I think it's been the past 4 years. It came up in 2012. Oh, no, wow, so 6. Oh, my goodness, wow. I think it came up in 2012. And, he's a young kid, got a lot of fire, kind of like Bryce Harper, and he's going to be expressive, and we could get, obviously, into the whole, unwritten rule stuff, MLB's commercial with Ken Griffey, which I thought was a great commercial, but they're not being apologetic and saying, hey, this is a new game now. But that's another day for another article and conversation. But they're very expressive, and so that's cool. That's completely fine. But I've seen Machado. I remember when he got into it with Donaldson in Oakland, when he got a hard tag, and then he did his best Vlade Divac impression by just flopping down, throwing his helmet. He got thrown at the knees, and then the next pitch, I think he let go of his bat to kind of act like I'm going to throw it towards the pitcher, and it wasn't even close. The pitcher is actually closer to the third base coach to show, okay, he's emotional, and he makes dumb, silly retaliation efforts, but he still is not meeting harm because he could have crushed Aguilar's ankle. He had every opportunity to. You can, with the whole, I think with Pedroia, and how they consider that a dirty slide. And Johnny and I were talking earlier this afternoon that where if Pedroia would have slid into Manny like that, all the fans would have said, oh, Pedroia's just a gritty player. So it's very hard to be objective about this because we all have our favorite players, we have our favorite fans.
Right.
Or our fans. And Manny's in LA, that's fine, best of luck to him. I'll move on to cheering for a bunch of, AAA players next year. But I don't think it's dirty. It's hard to prove intent, I also, when I think of dirty, I think of someone like Ndamukong Suh or Vontae Perfect for Cincinnati, to where the play is over. It has nothing to do with what is currently going on. They're not finishing out a play or a block, and they're deliberately trying to harm somebody by stepping on them or leading with the helmet. So I don't think he's dirty. I said in my article, I'm not willing to concede to that at this moment. But if he's not careful, if he doesn't mature, if he doesn't get someone to maybe mentor him, I think he could be eventually labeled as such if there's a consistent pattern and it starts going into the realm of intentionally harming somebody. So he has to be careful. I think we throw that term dirty around way too flippantly, way too quick. I think we need to be more responsible with our language and our vocabulary when it comes to critiquing other athletes. But it wasn't dirty, it was just dumb.
Yeah, and my take on it is that, first, Twitter is Twitter. I mean, Twitter is that website that we all go to and all trust because Twitter is right about everything. ... LOL. With that being said, people on Twitter probably wanted Machado suspended at least a game. And had that happened, I bet you all of Twitter would have been happy about it. But here's the thing. As Brian said, we're too quick to judge. We're too quick to judge intent. We're too quick to judge a suspension, judge a fine, etc. And one of my professors at SVSU, Dr. Bill Williamson, who actually adopted this podcast as an internship for this semester, had said if we all waited a minute and thought about what we tweeted before we actually tweet it, the world would be a much better place. Now, of course, I'm going a little bit off track to what actually happened, but when you slow down the play, it looks like there's intent, but when it's in real time, you can't really judge that call. And so the fine may have been just a reaction to the internet. If it was intent, then it was intent. But I think we all say move on because that was last series. The fine has been given, no suspension, whatever. Let's play ball.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And I think maybe I could be more, clear in intent to harm. I'm sure there was an intent to send a message. But Aguilar looked okay, and I think it was just simply, hey, I'm here. You guys are chatting. And I mean, because I know there was even a follow up when he got a bunt single. He kind of ported his jock a little bit and not just adjusting. It was definitely some type of gesture that was brought up, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's dumb and silly and it's childish, and we do need to move on. It's another day. You talk to Manny, he's probably moved on. Doesn't seem like he holds a grudge, and I'm sure Aguilar doesn't either. I think the next at bat or even the next game, like they were chatting on first base. It is what it is, and I think these players get over these types of things a lot quicker than we do as fans. So I'm gonna follow their lead.
Yeah, the media has a way of twisting stories. Johnny, anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I agree with Brian completely. You definitely can't judge intent, and intent to harm is a completely different thing. Like Brian said before too, he could have very easily stepped on Aguilar's ankle and broken his ankle. He dragged his foot, kicked him in the shin. I mean, it's not intentional. It's irresponsible. It's a silly thing. And like you said, just to let you know, all right, I'm here, which I think Aguilar was trying to do with Machado too. And they chatted about it later. These guys have to have short memories, especially in baseball. When you go through all year and you got the next at-bat the next inning, or you get the next game the next day. You have to have that quick turnaround. And I think these guys do get over it quickly. So they definitely more quickly than fans do.
Speaking of short-term memory, what did you say a couple minutes ago?
Start the podcast over.
Right. Of course, I always bring the funny moments. Like Brian, if you listen to the first show that Bruce and Johnny and I did, we talked about the Braves carrying 3 catchers, and I said, well, they need the extra equipment for when Ron Acuna Jr. comes to the plate to lead off.
No, I applaud the humor. I like it.
Of course. So moving on to our big World Series preview. Two big market teams, as one of my Twitter friends, Mandy at Clee Tribe Girl, said, two big market teams in the World Series? Yuck. Well, it's what it is, Mandy. Besides the point, let's start with Brian. I guess we'll go to World Series MVP. Who's going to be the difference maker in this World Series?
Oh my goodness.
I bring the heat, don't I?
Yeah, you do. And then I'll probably get a splitter later. I really want to say that it's going to be a position, not they're all position players, but I don't think it's going to be a pitcher. I think that's going to be too tough. I really do think it's going to be someone who gets an at bat every 2 or 3 innings and that can play some solid defense. I really am shooting for Mookie. I really, really think Mookie just knows how to shine during these times. He's been doing it all year. And just with that, the boy has got a cannon for an arm. And playing these types of games, you want to try to get every advantage. And I think I think LA is going to try to take some extra bases on either, some balls get down the line near the pesky pole, or when they're rattling around, and Mookie's really going to shine. I think this is his time. And, I'm not going to say it's kind of tough because I'm kind of giving away who I think may win, because usually the MVP goes to a player on the winning team because they were the most valuable for them to win. Not all the time, but I'd say about 95% of the time. But I really think it's going to be Mookie Betts.
Yeah, usually I would think the MVP, the World Series MVP, goes to the guy that propelled them to win the series. It would just make sense. Of course, unless it's Mike Trout. Then, of course, Mike says, oh my God, Mike Trout's in the World Series. We got to give it to him even if he goes over 25. That'll probably
I didn't know he was a choice.
Right.
Mike Trout is the answer for everything. Mike Trout.
Exactly my point. Oh my God, Mike Trout? We gotta go Mike Trout. Oh my God. So Ryan's going with bets. Johnny, World Series MVP.
I'm gonna go with Benintendi.
Okay.
I think the Red Sox will win. I would kind of like to see the Dodgers win. Only because I always like to see the team that's had the longest drought win it and get over that hump. The Dodgers haven't won since 1988. The Red Sox just won it 5 years ago. So I kind of want to see that. But honestly, I think that the Red Sox are just too good. And Benintendi is really coming into his own. And he gets overshined a little bit. Obviously in Boston with, of course, Bogarts has been there a while, but you have Betts, you brought in J.D. Martinez, who had a great year. I think he gets overlooked a little bit, and that play that he made in Game 4 to end the game with the Sox up by 2 runs, bases loaded, 2 outs, he dives for that ball and catches that ball. That saved the game. If that ball gets past him, the game's over and Houston wins in a walk-off. Well, all 3 of those runs score. And I think you're starting to see him really come into his own. And I think he's going to really shine in this series and put his stamp on, look, I'm just as good as everyone else. I deserve to be in the major leagues. And I'll give it to him. I'll give it to Benintendi.
Sure. Now, I will say, based off your point off the longest droughts, you guys should have known me in 2016. Because I was rooting hard for the Cubs. And the Cubs won that World Series after that rain delay. And yes, I will say this, even though some of my reporter friends are listening, like I had said in the beginning, but after the Cubs won that series, in the course of a half an hour, I did an entire 40 and 3 shots of Captain. I was excited and lit.
Wow.
I was going ham that night after the Cubs winning the World Series. Like I said, Brian, sometimes I'll throw the splitter at you, and I did there.
No, you're good.
Now, going back to the question of World Series MVP, I'll throw my curve and go with 2 predictions, 1 Red Sox and 1 Dodger. Not the Kurt Schilling bloody Red Sox, but Boston Red Sox. That's aside. If the Red Sox win the World Series, I'm going to go with JD as the MVP, and it's because he's been doing great things all year, and I think he'll be the one that propels them offensively to win the series. Like you had said, Betts and Benintendi have done a great job defensively, but I think JD will drive in the key runs that will propel the Red Sox to the top. If the Dodgers win the World Series, I'm going to go Max Muncy. Same concept, slugging, home runs. The offensive side of the ball I'm thinking more towards rather than defense. But something about Max Muncy. I think Muncy's that guy that you don't think about in fantasy, but he kills your lineup if you play DraftKings. If you get what I'm saying, I think he kind of takes that role, and I could see that in the World Series this time around.
He's had such a good year. He almost came out of nowhere. But he had 30. I think he had 35 home runs this year.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the Cody Bellinger this year. Last year Cody Bellinger burst on the scene and won the Rookie of the Year. This year it was Max Muncy. All of a sudden shows up and gives the Dodgers that extra guy in that lineup that they needed.
Yeah, and Matt Kemp seemed to really turn this team around to start the year too. In fact, I made a silly MVP pick back in July, and I had said Kemp, and it was because his attitude really forced the team to play better, I felt.
They weren't even looking at him. A lot of people, even in spring training, was saying they didn't know if Matt Kemp was going to make the team. The whole trade for him with the Braves was kind of a salary dump type thing because they got rid of Adrian Gonzalez. They took on Matt Kemp. It was a kind of a switch of money around basic type of thing. Mm-hmm. And they didn't even know if he was going to make the team come out of spring training because they had so many outfielders with Peterson and Bellinger and Kiki Hernandez could play the outfield, Chris Taylor. They didn't know that he was even going to make the team, but he showed up. He earned himself another contract probably.
Oh, definitely. So, Brian, anything to add? I'm guessing not. With that.
Sorry, I had you guys on mute.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
He threw his curveball. I get it. He threw his curveball.
I could hear you guys. I opened up, I had to get a drink of water, and then I thought my dog was going to bark real quick, so I muted because I didn't want the podcast to pick that up. You need to keep that in there.
Good move, man. Good move.
I think all those picks are... I think it could be any of those guys. I mean, that's the thing when you get to the World Series. Like, how do you predict something like this? Because it's the, let's see, Boston is the best team in the American League, and I think LA was second. I would assume, because I think Milwaukee's record was better.
Yeah.
So it could be, we could be completely off on this, but we could also be completely right. So I think it's good.
Alrighty, so I guess we'll hit this big World Series prediction. Boston, LA, of course, two big market teams. My friend Jenny's in a conundrum. BU Laxer, but now does work in LA for Fox Sports, so she's in a conundrum. I'm thinking, okay, if the Dodgers were in Brooklyn, maybe we could see a rematch of Ted Williams' ghost against Jackie Robinson's ghost. That would be an amazing series. But besides the point, let's start with Brian. Who's going to win it all?
I think I'm going to make a bold prediction here, like real bold. I think it's going to be Boston, and I think they're going to do it in 5.
That's definitely
a bold move. Yeah. I just think that Boston does fine on the road as well, and I think they'll end up. I think they'll win it in LA. Is what my prediction is. Short and to the point. That's my knuckleball for you.
Okay, so just like Kramer unlike Kramer on Seinfeld, they're going to see Mary Hart at Dodger Stadium. They're going to hear her voice and not go into a seizure.
Correct.
Well, that's good. That's my knuckleball, too, because even though I'm only 23 years old, I've watched my fair share of Seinfeld episodes. Man, are they hilarious.
I tell you what, that show is one I actually never got into. Not because I don't think it's funny. I just never did. And then Friends, never got into that one.
That was the one sitcom I never got into, was Friends.
Yeah.
Even though I have a lot of them on Facebook and Twitter, I just never really got into the show. So, besides the point, Johnny, World Series prediction.
Like I said, I'm kind of rooting for the Dodgers because it's been 30 years since they won. But I'm going to have to go with the Red Sox. I'll say in 6. I say it comes back to Fenway Park in Game 6 and they win it at home. I think a large part of it's going to be, I can't wait for Game 1 tomorrow. I mean, Sale against Kershaw. You don't get much better than that as far as the matchup goes. I just think Boston's their hitting is just too much. And what they did to Houston, I mean, like we said, after what Houston did to Cleveland, a lot of people were picking Houston, and the Sox just demolished them. And the Dodgers had trouble with Milwaukee. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Milwaukee, and I like Milwaukee. I actually picked Milwaukee to beat the Dodgers. Of course, I was wrong about that, but I like Milwaukee's team a lot. I just think they didn't have that go-to guy in the rotation, and their bullpen just fell apart. Jeffers was horrible in the series and everything like that. But I don't think that's going to happen to Boston. I don't think they're going to crumble like Milwaukee did. And I think their hitting is much better than Milwaukee's. Because like we said before, they can beat you with singles, doubles, they can run the bases. You know, although Milwaukee's a good team, if you shut down Yelich, they're kind of home run centric also. And you just can't do that with Boston. There's no let up in that lineup. I mean, we saw what Jackie Bradley did from the 9th spot in the lineup. He was the ALCS MVP, and he was batting 8th and 9th all series. So I just got to give it to Boston. I think they're a deeper team. I think their lineup's just too good, and they're going to expose the Dodgers bullpen a little bit.
Yeah, and I want to echo off that too. That like John was saying, LA struggled. They struggled with Milwaukee, and I think this is just it's a tale of two leagues. And from the AL, you had 3 teams over 100 wins, and you didn't have any in the National League. And again, that's just a small snippet, but it just goes to show that the National League's best is no match for the American League's best, and I think that's really what it comes down to this year.
Yeah, and my force or 2-seam fastball here is that I think this is going to go 7, and I actually think the Dodgers are going to win Game 1, but I think the Red Sox are going to win in 7. I think everybody like we are is going to make our Red Sox picks, and then all of a sudden I think the Dodgers are going to come out hot in Game 1. I think they're probably only going to win like 5-3 or something like that. But I think the Dodgers are going to win Game 1. The Red Sox will then win the next 2. Take a 2-1 lead in L.A. L.A. wins Game 4. Evens a series. L.A. wins Game 5. Makes things super interesting. Makes it 3-2 going back to Boston. The Red Sox win the next 2 games at Fenway, send the Beantown people home happy, and win the series in 7. Sale gets 3 wins.
Well, you might be able to give him the MVP if that happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very specific pick. I like it. Yeah. That was a good game.
Yeah, really.
I throw curveballs, I throw splitters, I throw 98-mile-an-hour fastballs.
The whole repertoire going there.
Exactly. I released the Kimbrel tonight with my arm kind of hanging out, kind of chicken awkwardly like Kimbrel does, and it looks really weird. But besides the point. So Brian's got the Red Sox in 5. Johnny's got the Red Sox in 6. I got the Red Sox in 7 with a twist. Kind of like spiked Arnold Palmer, a twist.
I just wanted to mention one thing. You know what the interesting thing about this is? And I just realized, because I know they had mentioned it, I think either last year or the year before, that the team with the longest layoff until the World Series has only won, I think, 2 of the last 15 World Series. So there's a nod to the Dodger fans that, you still got a shot, even though we're all picking the Red Sox, because the Dodgers had to play the 7. They're still going into game 1 with Kershaw, with their ace. And Boston's had almost a week off. And that, a lot of times, history's shown us recently, that hurts them.
Oh, you don't have to remind me about 2006 and 2012.
Yeah, with Detroit, yep.
Detroit swept both. Detroit swept both.
The past couple times that Boston has won in 2013 and 2007, they had to fight to get. They had a 7-game series against Cleveland. I think in 2007.
Right.
I forget in 2013. Did they beat the Tigers in 2013?
That's another thing you don't have to remind me about, because Ortiz hit the grand slam and
That's right.
Corey
Sorry
Hunter
about that.
flipped into the bullpen top. Oh, that was a bad hit.
I'm sorry. That was my brush you back pitch.
There you go. Yeah, sailed over my head. I flipped the bat at you. What the hell?
And they had to fight to win the ALCS. And they came into the World Series still up and still had the adrenaline going and still had that regular at-bats and the pitching, everything like that. Sometimes that helps. And that's something the Dodgers, they've had to put the pedal to the metal all the way up until, Saturday.
Yeah.
So that might give them a little bit of an advantage, especially going into Game 1.
Brian, anything to add?
I would agree. I think that's the truth for almost all sports. You see it a lot in football, where you get the bye week and then you come out completely flat and either get crushed or barely make it. So that's a very, very valid point, which means, Boston may lose that first one and people will panic. But I don't think that's room for panic, but that very well could happen. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. So with that being said, a little shout out for Brian here. I didn't really listen to the podcast, but I had seen in your podcast that you had a Hawk Harrelson tribute.
Yes.
Hawk was probably one of my favorite announcers, despite me being a Tigers fan. And I'm going to play to you one of my favorite Hawk Harrelson moments. This was Jim Thome hitting his 500th career homer. I gotta tell you, Hawk. Hawk was one of those guys that you either love him or you hate him, and I loved him.
Well, he's one of those. He was what they call a true homer. He calls the game, and he is clearly rooting for his team. And honestly, Johnny, you and I just started doing some writing. You've been doing it longer, and we try to be objective with a lot of this stuff. But there's just something about a home broadcaster just cheering for his team, but still calling the game for the other team. I don't know. There's something magical about that. I don't see any problem with it. I thought he was great.
Johnny, anything to add?
Yeah, Hawk Harrelson was good. You gotta love the guy, and I think all broadcasters, especially when you've been doing it as long as he has for the same team, as long as he has, you have to be somewhat of a homer. We're all human. We're all fans at heart. I mean, Hawk Harrelson was a player for, I think, 13, 14 years. He was a good player, no less. And you have to be somewhat of a homer. Just following the team, being around the team 6-7 months out of the year, and watching them, getting to know the guys and everything like that, it's going to come through. As objective as you try to be, I think it just comes through in your voice, in your inflection. You get just that little bit more excited when your guy hits a home run, and a little bit more disappointed when the other team scores a run. Whether it's subconscious or not, I think that happens, no doubt. That happens. We're all human and we're all fans.
Yes, definitely. And nowadays with baseball being more national, where you can see just about every game, I always love to hear Hawks call. And another guy I like to hear is Len Casper and Jim DeShays from the Cubs. Another guy that I like to hear, and they're very under the radar because they're on the West Coast, Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow. They bring a lot of great analysis, I feel, to the game. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, I really haven't listened to much of them, obviously because they're on the West Coast. I'm over here in Boston. Mm-hmm. But I know I've listened to them before. Because I have the MLB, so I watch some San Francisco games here and there. Right. But yeah, they're both very good. Both really good. Dwayne Kuiper, they've been doing it for a long time, too. I know Kuiper's been in the booth for, 20, 30 years.
Seems like it, at least.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Brian.
I was just saying, one of my favorites growing up, like I said, in Baltimore, was when Johnny Miller was calling the games. And I think he went from there to Sunday Night Baseball and then to San Francisco for a little bit. I don't think he's doing it anymore.
Yeah, he's still doing KNBR radio.
Okay. And then currently right now, Gary Thorne for Baltimore.
He's really good.
Yes.
He reminds me a lot of what is the NHL broadcaster usually during the playoffs? Emmett Cole, I think is his name.
Doc Emmerich, maybe?
Yeah, Doc Emmerich. That's it. I don't know where I got Emmett Cole from, but I just the vocabulary that these guys use. They don't repeat words. They know the players. Some people are just born with this. Like they come out of the womb just calling. They probably came out calling their own birth. Sorry to give images to people. That's the best explanation I can give. But yeah, it's broadcast. And I've heard some really sorry broadcasters too. Like, do you even like this sport? But yeah, it's a great broadcaster like Hawk Harrelson, and it's hard to come by. So I wanted to do that little tribute to him, and just thought it was totem.
Of course.
Another guy that's really good too, I just want to throw out, because we're talking about the AL Central too, Tom, because I'm a Twins fan, so we'll stick with that. But Tom Hamilton from Cleveland, he's always got some great calls.
I always tell people when I have a cold, I kind of sound like Tom Hamilton a little bit.
Yeah.
Seriously, whenever I have a bad cold, I sound like Tom Hamilton slightly. It's the weirdest thing.
Those most people to sound like, I suppose.
That's true.
Yeah, someone said that in some of my earlier shows when I kind of were very formal and I had, a full-on script and I was going from point to point, some said I sounded like Jim Rome because of my cadence, and I was like, oh, man.
You must be burning.
That gives me a compliment, but I don't, I was a big fan of Rome is Burning growing up. It's better now. But so I guess I'll have to take that as a compliment.
There you go. So I guess I will ask the one last question that I finish every show with, and that is: do you guys have anything else to add to this wonderful Tom Green podcast?
Go ahead, John. Danny?
No, not too much. I'm gonna be cheesy and plug our site, the Scorecrowsports.wordpress.com, and follow us on Twitter at the Scorecrow. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We're kind of spreading out everywhere at this point. But yeah, we have a bunch of baseball stuff coming out in the off season. So once the World Series is over, Brian's going to be contributing a lot. Obviously, we spoke to Bruce before, so we're going to have a lot of fantasy baseball stuff coming up, and obviously we get the NBA and NFL going on right now. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, obviously the plug for the Scorecrow Sports. It's awesome to be a part of that community. We chat. Everybody's down to earth. It's really good to find people that are passionate about sports, that they don't have a chip on their shoulder. They just love the sport. They love each other. It's a great community. And then also my own shameless plug of the Ball and Mitt Podcast. I started back in May. I don't try to really keep up on stats or who's hitting what. I'll let MLB Network and other reporters do that. I just kind of put in a little bit of humor and some more like trending topics. Try to do some different segments. It's fun. So just wanted to plug that real quick and just appreciate you, Tom, for having me on, man. It's been fun.
Of course, always a great show. And of course, since we're mentioning Hawk Harrelson, I gotta kind of leave this show on a bit of an emotional note with Hawk, and I'm gonna play the last call that Hawk made. It Of course, we go from laughs to tears, but I'm gonna miss Hawk next season. I'm sure you guys will too.
Yeah.
This ball game is over. I've enjoyed it very much. I have enjoyed it. I've loved it, and I will never forget it.
Beautiful scene as both teams came out, waved to Hawk, wishing him a fond farewell with his family in the background, which was just great. And if you can a little bit, give us a couple of your thoughts.
I'm going to give you one, and that's it. I love you all, and I always will. As I said, I'll go to my grave for that.